Welcome to another video tutorial in my series on heat embossing. In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate a technique that simulates the look of aged metal. It's sort of a shabby chic look or a vintage look, so we could call it, I guess, vintage embossing. It's very similar, well actually it is, a heat resist technique, but instead of using inks, we're going to be using acrylic paint. So these are the supplies you're going to need for this technique. You're going to need some kind of surface that you'll be doing your heat embossing on, and it needs to be thicker than your average cardstock because we're going to be putting a couple of layers of acrylic paint on it, so it needs to be thick enough to hold that. In other words, you don't want something that the paint's going to be too heavy for. So I've got a piece of mat board that I cut this tag shape out of using my Zizix Big Shot machine. Chipboard works really great for this technique. So you're going to need your material that you'll be doing your embossing on. You're going to need some clear embossing ink or Versamark. You're going to need some kind of rubber stamp or rubber stamps. You need clear embossing powder. You'll need your heat tool. And then you're going to need a couple of different colors of acrylic paint. And you need to use a matte finish, and you need to use two dark colors, and I'll explain that a little bit more as we get into it. So let me show you how this technique is done. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your chipboard or whatever it is that you're going to be doing your heat embossing on, and we're going to first give it a coat of black acrylic paint. Now you could use dark brown, dark red, but whatever you use on the base, you want to be sure it's a really dark color. So you're just going to cover your board with your black paint, and you set that aside to dry. So sometimes you want to do several pieces at once. Since you're going to be having to wait on those to dry, you might want to paint several pieces. So you're going to leave that set aside to dry, and once it's dry it will look like this. I've actually painted both sides of this. So you're going to have a piece that has black paint on it, or dark brown, whatever you choose to use. And we're going to need to get your embossing powder out and your Versamark pad out. You're going to ink up a stamp with your Versamark pad, and you're going to stamp the surface. And I'm going to stamp again because I didn't get the whole tag covered. Okay. And then once you've got your Versamark ink on there, you're going to cover it with some clear embossing powder. It's real easy to see on this because it shows up so well, the white against the black. And then you're going to heat this up and melt your embossing powder just like we've done in all the previous videos. And I'm doing this on my non-stick craft sheet. If you don't have one of these, I'd recommend getting one of these. I really love this. It's like the best thing since sliced bread because you can paint on it, emboss on it. It's real easy to clean up. It's a really nice surface. So you can probably see that embossing powder isn't melting. Okay, hopefully that you can see that that's embossed. And the next step is now to use your second color of acrylic paint, and you want something that's also fairly dark because it has to be opaque enough that it's going to cover for the color underneath. In other words, I might not want to use a white or something on top of this. You guess you could use a white, but you'd have to use it on awful thick. But a darker color works well, and you're just going to give it another layer right on top of that embossing that you did. So, you're going to paint this all. That's what it look like. And you're going to set that aside to dry. And then once it's dry, it's going to look like this. And I just use a rag. You could use, you know, whatever is available to you, maybe some paper towels. I think a rag works best. And you need it slightly damp. Now, don't get it too wet, because if you get it too wet, it's going to take off all the paint. You just want it to take off a little bit. So I just spritzed it with a little bit of water. And you're just going to, what you're doing is you're rubbing that top off, the paint off of the top of your letters. So, and of course, you're just going to rub that until you get the paint off the top. I think I'm going to need a little bit more water. Just work it around. And you'll see the letters are starting to show up there. It takes a little bit of experimenting to get the technique down. Sometimes I don't let my tag dry quite all the way, but they're beginning to show up. And when you get it all done, it's going to look like this when you get those letters cleaned off. I've also added a little bit of glimmer mist. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. I don't know if you've ever used this glimmer mist, but I spritzed it with a little bit of glimmer mist. But anyway, that's what it will look like when you get done. Here's a couple more that I've finished. I think the glimmer mist will show up more on this one. I've spritzed it with some gold glimmer mist, but it's the same technique. It's black, and then I coated it with kind of this olive green paint, and then wiped the paint off the top of the stamped image. And here, once again, I started with the black background, added this purple, and then just wipe the paint off my stamped image. So it's a really neat effect, and then I can just you know, tie these together, tie them on a notebook, or use them as a bookmark. There's lots of different things you can use this technique for. It's a really cool look. So I hope you enjoy it, and you join me again soon for another video tutorial.